What's up, everybody? This is Drew, aka Aren't You Funny, bringing you yet another lovely episode of Peace of Mind, and I am joined yet again by Mr. Awesome Bailey, aka Vapor, aka Mr. Awesome, and hopefully we're going to be bringing you some awesome, crispy content today. Hope that you all enjoyed as much as usual. Maybe even more so. Who knows? Because I feel like we're kind of getting a good flow, getting a good feel for things, and the podcast seems to be stepping it up a bit. And one thing I have to say is that, and I've gotten some awesome feedback from people that I interact with on Twitch regularly and people that I interact with in person and all of that. And I greatly appreciate the feedback. Like, please keep it coming because that's only going to make the podcast better, which then makes it reach more people, which then makes me happy, which then hopefully makes you all happy too. So it's a lovely trickle down effect. So please keep that coming by all means because that continues to encourage me and continues to let me know that I'm on the right path, doing the right thing. Some things that I can switch up and change up here and there and make it a little bit better. But, whatever I need to do to keep giving you all that awesome content, that's what I'm going to try and do. So, with that being said, I am going to start with my usual disclaimer of even though I am a therapist by day and a gamer by night, I am not your therapist as much as I'm sure I would love to be. This isn't intended to be a replacement for anything that you've got going on with whatever professional advice or life coaching or whatever the case may be. Whatever services you may be involved in, this isn't to replace any of that. This is just kind of like a food for thought kind of thing, and maybe teach you some things that you hadn't considered, or maybe giving you a different perspective on things, that kind of stuff. Things that we can do to try and make your life at least a little bit better. So that's the aim of the show. Also, if you are in a point where you're just like, you know what, I just really can't deal, life's a little bit too much as I would love to be a great resource for you, I'm not going to be the most appropriate one. I highly recommend that you reach out to whatever's comfortable for you. If it's the suicide hotline, if it's your local crisis services, or whatever the case may be, please reach out to them because I guarantee you're not alone, and there are people that care about you. And I want you to get whatever you need to become the happiest, healthiest human being possible. So I recommend that you do that. So with that being said, Mr. Bailey and I have kind of like a a wide spread of things that we're going to talk about today. Some a little bit more in detail than others, but basically, Bailey texted me this week and he was like, "Yo, I've got some ideas for the podcast. Like, I'm an awesome human being." And I went back and listened to some of your old podcasts, and I'm like, "Yo, these are some things that you talked about that you probably should have talked about more." I was like, yo, that sounds great. Let's make this happen. Because Bailey's always full of awesome ideas, especially for the podcast. So, forgive us if we jump around a little bit today. And if we're, because usually we're focused on like, oh, this is our main theme. So, hopefully you'll be able to follow along with us. If not, please send me some feedback and be like, hey, you should have focused on this more and turn this into a completely other episode, which I'm sure Bailey will do anyway. But if you all have ideas, please feel free to do so. Just reach out to me and be like, hey, yo, Drew, you should have done this. It's all good. First of all, in case this is your first time meeting Bailey, which it shouldn't be, but in case this is your first time tuning in and you're like, yo, who is this guy? What is all this? I don't even know what this means. Bailey, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and we'll get started.
All right. My name is Bailey. I used to stream, blah blah blah. A lot of people know me as RX Vapor or NASCARlo on Xbox. That's about it. That's about it. Yep.
All true statement. Oh, please, please.
Yep.
So he's going to try and downplay the things that he does now. Okay. So some other truths about Mr. Bailey is that he is the epitome of an entrepreneur because he decided that he was going to go join his friends in, excuse me, he was going to go join some of his friends in Florida and is now like the president of Car Tracker and is also involved in a car related business called Black Ops Performance. So he also has some real world experience just outside of I used to be a streamer. Like, please, this guy over here. Um, so yeah, so that's and really Bailey's just an awesome dude. So I love having him on when we get the chance, and that's what brings him on the podcast. So
Thank you. I appreciate it.
it's all good, man. Just telling the truth. So, what would you like to start with, Mr. Bailey? What do you feel like would be appropriate?
Um, I guess we'll start with like I guess the main topic, the life work balance. We'll go from that and kind of break
Yes.
it off from there.
Okay. So let's do just that.
You want to
S-
go or you want me to?
You know, I'm feeling a little I'm feeling a little tangential today, so I think you should go first because I'm gonna end up going on a tangent. So I think you should start, and then I'll follow up. How about that?
Okay. Yep, works for me. All right. So life work balance, I guess for to start things off, what it means to me is everyone should work their heart out, in my opinion.
Sure.
Never be lazy and take life for granted. Um, and my opinions in life happens that I got thrown into a job at 15 and a half because my parents were like, get the hell out of our house. You need to go get a job and pay bills. I was like, okay, will do. And so when I first got my job, I started out as a dairy assistant. So I stocked eggs, milk, ordered cheese, everything you need for dairy products, I guess. Anyways,
All
so
of the
it
above.
started off as a 40-hour week of job. Yeah, all of the above. And I was really good at it. And most people would just be like, how in the world are you good at stocking milk? Don't question my powers, okay? It just happens.
This Bailey
And
superpower.
so that's right. I just go to random grocery stores and do it now for free. Um, so my manager noticed all my hard work and like the 40-year-old guy that's worked there his whole life, poor thing. I feel bad for him. Um, he goes up to the main manager, and he's like, "This kid just went in here and has only been doing this job for a month, and I'm gonna be completely honest, does it better than I do." And I was like, "Oh, thanks," but that's basically telling the manager I'm taking your job, and that's what happened. It was really sad, and I
Nice.
felt like a jerk, but it is what it is. So I became the dairy manager for that, and then the produce manager left, and I became the produce manager, and then I became the frozen manager, and then I started doing stuff in meat department, and then I did cashier, bagger, and gas clerk at the grocery store, and I was like, why are they giving me these lowball jobs now? And I asked the manager, and he was like, "Oh, you're doing all these lowball jobs because you're going to a new store to run it." And I was like, "What do you mean run it?" He's like, "You're going to be a co-manager at another store." And I was like,
Eek.
"You mean the big co-manager?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Eek.
And so at this point, I didn't even have a car at the moment. I was still driving my mom's car. And like it broke down all the time because it was just a piece of junk, and it was halfway my fault because when I got off of work at midnight, I'd go do burnouts in it and everything. And sorry, mom, it's my fault. Your car sucks. Uh, so um, I started doing that job, and the car wouldn't start one day. And my manager was like, "What do you mean you can't get into work? You better walk to work." And I was like, "Nah, bro, I'm not walking to work. That's
Not
a
happening.
2 hour walk. It's a 30-minute drive already." And so he came and picked me up, and he was like, "You're not leaving here, and you're not going home until me and you go to a dealership and go get you a car." And I was like, "Well, I
Dang.
don't have the money for this." And he was like, "Well, you better find the money." And I was like, "What do you mean? You can't just do this to me." And he's like, "Well, I'm doing it to you." So he took me to a car dealership. I called my great grandpa and I was like, "This is happening." And my grandpa was like, "Well, I'm not giving you much money. Here's $1,000. Hope this works." And I was like, "Okay." and I went to a place and I bought this little Chrysler 300 piece of junk. It only ran for like 2 months. It broke down on me on Thanksgiving Day,
Oh,
and yeah, so I didn't get to eat dinner with my family or anything. It sucked,
yeah, it's not a good
and
day.
yeah, not a great day at all. And anyways, uh, I went back to work like really disappointed after the whole Thanksgiving holiday, and they were like, "What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "I'm just gonna go be a big boy and go in debt." And I went and bought my first car, like real car,
Okay.
and which is the little red rocket that everyone knows me for posting on Facebook
Yeah.
for 2 years straight. That everyone's like, "Why are you
Yeah, you
showing off
did.
your grandma's sedan?" Because it's my grandma's sedan, and it's loud and obnoxious. But so anyway, I'm just giving everyone a brief story of how this goes, and then I'll get into the topic. I know I'm going off
You're
charts,
good,
but
man. I told you it's gonna be a
anyways, yeah.
tangent
So
day for me, so it's all good.
yeah. So I bought that car, and everything went great, and I was getting moved. Like I was making more money at the grocery store and stuff because I could get on the salary. I could make more money, blah blah blah. And I was doing 73 to 80 hours a week. So I was home during the week for 10 hours. I seen
Yeah.
my bed every week, 10, 15 hours a week. And the rest I was sitting in a grocery store, and it was driving me up the wall. I would come home, like my little sister would say hey to me to be like, please shut up and leave me alone type stuff. Like it was getting to me bad.
Yeah.
And so I told my boss, I was like, look, I need to back off these hours or I need a vacation or something. And he's like, okay, here's a 48-hour vacation. Take the weekend
I
off.
knew it. I
Don't
was
think
gonna say
about
like a
yeah,
day.
yeah. He was like, don't think about Ingles, don't think about the grocery store, blah blah blah. And I was like, wow, 48 hours. Okay. And then I was sitting there, I was like, okay, I better not complain about this 48 hours. I better run out the door and go enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so I was hanging out with the girlfriend I had at the time, and I got called on the Sunday that I was supposed to be off at 6 a.m. They're like, hey, sorry, we know you're supposed to be on vacation or taking these paid days off, but we need you in here. And I was like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah. And at that moment, I just knew. So I walked in and I was like, look, here's um here's my keys. I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice. Do whatever you got to do, but I'm not staying here anymore.
Boom.
And so I finished out my 2 weeks and knocked that out, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't have a job for like 2 weeks. But I had money saved up, so it wasn't like I was hurting or
Yeah.
anything. But like I relaxed. My parents were like, "Why aren't you going to get a job right now?" And I was like, "Because I'm on vacation. I literally quit to be on vacation." So, and so I took 2 weeks just like away from everything, went to like Tennessee and then went to the beach and everything. It was like I went and did everything those 2 weeks.
You were
And
living
when I
large.
got back from vacation, yeah, I looked at my bank account and I was like, oh no, I need a job. And so I went and applied for this company that makes train brakes. They like do all
Oh.
the brake system for trains. And I was gonna make really, really good money, and I'm stupid for still not taking it. But, I
Well,
wouldn't have done the
obviously
stuff I'm
not.
about to tell you about now.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. But I guess I should say I was dumb for not finding that job years ago. I guess is
Sure.
what I should say.
Sure.
Um. Anyways, so it was the day before me. And let me say this part real quick. Parker, I love you.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. I know. I see you in the chat. I see you. Blah blah blah. Anyways, so it was the day before I was supposed to start there, and I knew a guy in Florida that was doing this whole Black Ops thing, and was like throwing me these ideas about the whole car show tracker thing, but didn't know how to get it started or off the ground.
You're like, dude, I'll do it.
And yeah, exactly. And so I called the train people. They're like, "Hey, where are you at?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm on my way to Florida. Sorry, I'm not coming in. I
Oh,
quit, I guess."
savage.
Yeah. And they're like, "What? You could have told us." I was like, "Oh, sorry." But
Savage.
anyways, I came to Florida and I started helping with Black Ops, doing all this import stuff with JDM cars. And then I got Car Show Tracker off the ground, and I'm in the process of building a new website for Car Show Tracker, getting the app developed and all that. So here I am with all that.
Yeah, well, and I
But
think one other
anyway,
important thing to note with all of that is that you've always had an interest in cars from day
Yeah.
one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah,
you
oh
know,
yeah.
not
I
only
mean, my dad worked with NASCAR and everything, so
right, exactly. Which I didn't know that. That's awesome.
yeah, he did the
But
buckshot car, the Cheez-It car. So
okay. So
my
you
whole
know,
house was filled with Tylenol and Cheez-Its. That's all we ever ate for dinner.
So you ate Tylenol for dinner. All right, respect.
Yeah, yeah, it was a side dessert.
Respect. We're having PB and J and Tylenol, kids. Oh, okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Um, no, but so I think one important quick thing to note with this is that Bailey not only took it wasn't just like a random, oh, okay, I'm just going to go to Florida now. Like, you know, your passion came up and you were like,
Yeah.
hey, I've got to take advantage of this while I can. Because, I mean, because of your huge interest in cars. And so not only would you be able to get to work with cars one on one, but you would be able to basically build like the beginnings of a franchise or an empire in car
Yeah, let's
related
hope.
things. Exactly. Yeah, that's the hope. Um,
Yep.
and at the very least, you're getting a huge amount of experience. So
Oh yeah, it's gonna be one hell of a resume if it doesn't work
exactly,
out.
exactly. Um, so so yeah, so I think that's just a quick side note before you got into the rest of it because I felt like that's important.
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah. But yeah, like anyway, I just wanted to give everyone a brief story of what I'm doing and how life started for me. But the life balance system is definitely going back to the grocery store life of working 70 or 80 hours a week. Like
Yeah,
you don't have a social life, you don't get to see your girlfriend or if you're best friends for all that matter. You literally came home, went to bed, took a shower, went right back to work
yeah,
every single day. And everyone's like, "Oh, don't complain," blah blah blah. A lot of people are lucky to have jobs. I'm
yeah,
like, yeah, yeah, of course, I was lucky to have a job. I loved making a paycheck.
yeah,
But your body, your brain, everything breaks down. Your health, you're getting a paycheck, but your health is not. Your health is literally killing you slowly.
yeah,
So definitely learning that money wasn't everything. It
yeah,
was great to have, but sometimes when you look at the light at the end of the tunnel and it's a picture of you dying because you worked too hard, you know, you
yeah,
don't
yeah, for
want
sure,
that.
for
and
sure.
and I was like I was 18 years old. Like I wanted a childhood, not even a childhood. I was like like the teens through your 20s is supposed to be the best time of your life, not the worst time of your life. But
Yeah. Well, I mean
um
the time period where you find yourself, right?
yeah, exactly. And you're not
Yeah.
gonna find yourself in the back of the grocery store getting yelled at by grandma stocking bananas. You're not.
I mean, you might. You never know. Like, you know,
You
somebody
definitely
might find
might find
value in
your
that.
life balance
Yeah.
and figure out what am I worth when you're doing that.
Right.
But you definitely, in my opinion, I found myself staring at an ocean and relaxing and being away from all of these people.
Exactly.
But yeah, I definitely think everyone should have a break from their job and get to enjoy it with their friends and family. It's definitely the most important thing. And I've definitely learned don't bring work home. Don't like
Well,
and let me because I know exactly what you're
yeah.
gonna say.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm gonna put it in your words. Definitely, when your wife asks, "Hey, what's going on?" type deal, you definitely talk about it. But if you're in a bad mood at work, you don't come home and just screaming at your wife just because you had a bad day type deal.
Sure.
You, in my opinion, I think if you're having a bad day and you're coming home and you're angry, sit in your car for 10 minutes, turn on your favorite song, breathe, and then go inside the house.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that directly relates back to something that we talked about in a previous episode of just finding your release. So, you know, again, for me, that's, you know, my commute home is my release. So that's my, okay, I'll call my wife, let her know I'm on my way home, and then I'll turn on my music or, you know, here lately I've been turning on a lot of podcasts, and so I'll listen to those on my way home, and that's my mental cue. Um, that's my everyday routine of, okay, I'm gonna turn this on. This is my mental separation from work, and I'm going home now. But I think, you know, before Bailey goes on, one thing to keep in mind for this is this isn't stuff that works for everybody, because some people actually do the exact opposite, and they thrive when they bring work home with them because that's the one place where they feel like they can get stuff done, or whatever the case may be. So we'll get into more of that here in a second, and let Bailey talk about his work life balance. Then I'll talk about some alternatives.
Yeah, I agree with you. Being like doing work at home is definitely like I guess I can use now for example is
Sure.
because Ingles like the grocery store I didn't bring much home. I didn't bring the groceries home to stock from my house. So like but the job I have now which is like I live at my job like my apartment is connected to where my job is on the other
Yeah.
side. So it's I never really get to escape my job, if that makes sense. Like, people will call me and be like, hey, can you do this? And it's like, but I'm off work. And then they're like, but you're at the office. You're already there. The computer's right in front of you type deal.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? And that's the worst thing. So I've tried to, like, make sure work does not come through my doors after 6 o'clock. Like, after that, it's like, nope, I'm done. I'm out. Blah, blah, blah. But it just doesn't happen. Like, I mean, for the job I'm doing, though, you got to be on it until it happens. It's a 24/7 grace period.
Absolutely. I'm I'm sorry. Bailey, you can keep talking real quick. I got a phone call that keeps coming up, so I'll be right back.
Okay, no problem.
But go ahead and keep talking.
But yeah, anyways, yeah, I will. Um, anyways, like Funny said, like bringing work home is it's a very risky business. There's some people that want to bring it home because it's their quiet place. They're in their own personal office and they have their own music going and not the elevator music that plays in their office at work, I guess you could say. Um, or it's just the moment, like I said, the moment they're alone and they don't have anyone asking them 9 million questions every 5 seconds and throwing their focus off. But yeah, I guess I don't really know how to explain it anymore after that. It's definitely a 50-50 blend. You have to do it or you don't type deal. And I feel like an idiot for what I'm saying because I don't know if it makes sense or not. But for more life balance stuff, Funny will have to elaborate on more of it. He's done more than me. He's in the adulthood of more than what I do because my job is kind of laid back now compared to what it used to be. My when I did my life balance stuff, it was more of a I had no choice. My job was going to make me sit there for 80 hours or not. So that's all I got for it. So I'll wait till he returns. But does
Actually,
anyone have
I'm
any
back.
questions in the chat? Oh, great,
I'm back.
lovely. Look at
Sorry
there.
about that. Sorry, I was freaking out because my mom called me and she never calls me twice in a row unless like usually she'll just shoot me a text or something. She called me twice in a row and I was like, is she okay? Something going on? What's up? She was
Yeah.
just calling to let me my trunk was open and to see if anybody was in the living room. So we're good. I was just a little
Oh,
concerned there
okay.
for a minute. It's like, oh God. Um, so I'll be honest, I didn't hear your last part of it, but I'm gonna assume that you were still talking about your work-life balance. Yes?
Yeah, same thing, same thing. I was
Okay.
going like people like you were saying that some people thrive to come home and do their work because like maybe because they get to sit in their personal office with their music and not like elevator music and
Yeah.
there's not 9 million people walking past their door and breaking their line of focus, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, the flip side of that is also true. And then I'll give you all kind of a background of my work history and talk about work-life balance for me and how it developed. But I think one thing to keep in mind with this is that again, this is just what works for me and Bailey. So it may be that you don't have the luxury of having like a work life balance because you don't have the time to get away from it, or you work from home, and so then you have to kind of create this different sort of work life balance where you're able to separate, like, okay, I'm in my office, so now that I'm out of my office, I'm no longer in work mode, or whatever the case may be. So I know that there are a lot of different situations and backgrounds. Like, streamers don't necessarily get away from their work quite as easily as everybody else because their work's on the internet and the internet's everywhere, so they have to like disconnect. So point being, different life circumstances means different work-life balance. The important part is that you find what works for you. Because ultimately, again, this is just kind of a food for thought kind of thing. So, hopefully hearing what works for me and Bailey, you'll be able to find something that works for you in the process. Um,
Your happy middle.
exactly. Exactly. That is 100% it. Um, so, with that being said, quick work history for me, I did not have the major, I guess, traumatic experience that Bailey did as far as work is concerned, because really, I had it pretty easy, if I'm being honest. Like, um, I still have it easy, comparatively speaking to a lot of other people out there. Um, so I'm gonna have a very different approach with this, but ultimately um, the thing the thing that I've had and my experience with, I used to work as a package handler, and I worked night shift doing that, and I did a program that allowed me to basically get my college paid for, which was freaking incredible, because then all I had to worry about was paying money for books. And because I was lucky enough to have support from home, I didn't really have to worry about that either. My mom and my dad and whoever else would help me out with book costs, since I took care of what they were going to help me with, which was college. And so then, yeah, they kind of spread the money elsewhere and allowed me to not have to worry about that, which was really nice. And I think I value that more and more every day, because that I realize that that is an incredible opportunity that most people won't get. And I only had to work part time to make that happen. Like, I was just working about 4 hours a night. Granted, it was manual labor, so it wasn't exactly like the most thrilling job. It wasn't the most mentally stimulating job. Um, it wasn't the most rewarding job like I have now. But it wasn't the worst work I could have been doing either. I mean, I wasn't working for Ford, where you're gonna have um, where you're gonna have back problems early on, or the different complaints that I've heard with car related plant jobs, where you've got very minute parts that you're having to work with, or working on an assembly line or anything along those lines. It wasn't anything of that caliber. It was a factory job, but it wasn't anything like crazy. Um, and it was night shift, but I'm a night owl, so that kind of came naturally to me. So I didn't really have any complaints about that either. Like, in fact, I have the opposite problem. I have trouble shutting off at night because I'm more inclined to be
Must be
awake.
nice.
Right. But that's just me. That's always been me. Like, if you were to ask my parents, like, okay, well, if Drew had his options, when would he go to bed when he was a teenager, and when would he get up? Like, in the summer, if I was up before noon, it was a miracle, because if it wasn't by my choice, like, it was a miracle if I was up by noon, because I stayed up late playing games and chilling, hanging out with my friends, because I like staying up late and sleeping in. Like, that's just always been my thing. But the world doesn't run on night shift, so that there's that too. But anyway, so I did that for a while. I worked 4 or 5 hours a night, 3, 4, 5 hours depending on the day, and I did package handling and paid for my school and did all of that. And again, it wasn't the most rewarding job, but I didn't have to have much work-life balance with it. The the major balance that I had to manage was the fact that the world is not on a night shift schedule. And so then that meant, and I was doing it while I was in college as well. So that meant that my family got very pissed off at me at times, because they felt like I didn't care, or I wasn't making an effort, or, all I wanted to do was sleep, or all I wanted to do was whatever, and then I wasn't making them a priority. That was something that I navigated that I didn't necessarily expect to have to navigate, which was a little bit weird. And then, I had very little social life, because all my friends were on a normal day shift kind of schedule. And so they were used to being up around 11 or 12, and they didn't understand the concept of, if you call me before 12 o'clock, I will murder you. because if you wake me up, I will be very upset with you if it's unplanned. And neighbor, if you are mowing next to my window and it is 11 o'clock, I will come out and murder your face because I'm trying to sleep because I just went to sleep like 3 hours ago. So, yeah, the struggle was very real. Exactly. See, yeah, exactly. That's my best friend just came in chat and he was like, "Yep, the struggle. The struggle is real." It's like, "Yes. Yes," because that absolutely sucked. And the only thing that I had going for me with that was that some of my friends were also doing the same thing and I developed new friendships through work which really helped with things. But like uh, my now wife had to deal with me being on a different shift and my family feelings along the way. And there were some times where, again, people felt like they were very left out or they trying to get me to go do these things. Then they wouldn't understand why I didn't want to do the things. And I was like, look, I don't, this isn't me. I need some sleep. And you're not respecting the fact that I need sleep because you don't get it. And so that was a big thing for me, was being able to set those boundaries and eventually say, look, I'm taking care of my business. I'm studying like I need to. I'm getting the grades that I need to. I'm doing what I need to do to graduate. And if you can't value the time that you have with me, then you're going to lose out on some time, and that's going to be that. Like, I'm going to work. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to take care of my responsibilities. And then as time progresses, then we'll be able to have more of a relationship, or as responsibilities decrease somewhere, then I appreciate that, Sam. So, I really, I had my struggles. So fast forward a few years, I graduate, actually a couple years, fast forward a couple years. So I graduate and I'm in my master's program, and I'm also doing my internship at the job that I currently work in, a mental health facility. So I'm interning there, and my work life balance is again non-existent because I can't have boundaries, because I have boundaries, but they can't be ones that I want. So I'm one of those people, much like Bailey, where I'm like, I can't bring this home with me. But I had to then, because of my limitations as a student and the fact that, office space isn't necessarily always available to students. And I have to apply the things that I'm doing in my internship and in my life, or in my job, to my studies. And so then if I'm constantly, and let me just tell you, like, graduate programs, I know a lot of people probably talk about this, but graduate programs are freaking intense. If you plan to go full time and you really intend to dedicate yourself to that, like, be ready for the fact that even though you're interested in that stuff, it's going to be a struggle, because that stuff, like, you want, for my job, or for my field in particular, which was psychology, and I got a master's in counseling psychology. So, and that's not even as intense as some of the other degrees out there, like, your doctorates and your PsyDs and that kind of stuff. Like, be ready for an intense amount of reading and an intense amount of writing and research and application 24/7. Like, it is nonstop. It is go, go, go. If you're not working on something school related, you're getting left behind. Just because it is like, and again, it makes it better because you're interested in what you're doing, but everything at that point matters because it is specifically directed toward whatever field you're going into. So you need to know your stuff if you want to be able to function as a professional. And again, this isn't necessarily true for all degrees. Like, I know that we talked previously about Gary Vee and his podcast, and talking about Professor Broman's podcast where they talked about like specifically game design and business and that kind of stuff, and about how school doesn't do as much for you in those fields. But in my degree in particular, if you aren't paying attention, you're getting left behind, and you're going to end up missing something that is pretty vital for your career later, because you're going to be doing this stuff all the time. So you need to know your stuff. So when you have that kind of intensity going on, you don't have time to go out and have a nice dinner with your family. Like, you don't have time to go just disconnect for a while and go do whatever you want and go take a vacation. Like, you can't do that stuff. You can, but you can't expect to thrive. And so, the work-life balance is almost non-existent, because you have to dedicate yourself to that if you want to be good at your craft. And so with that helped me realize what I need to develop as a professional. And again, Bailey, I'll get you back in on this, but I told you it's going to be a tangent.
Oh, you're good.
um, so it helped me realize the things that I need to do as a professional now, because they weren't what was working for me. So for me, I'm a very emotionally invested person, and I care very much about what I do. Like, I'm one of the dweebs that believes in our mission statement as a company, or at least our previous mission statement. It's changed now. But our previous mission statement as a company, I believe in it. Like, I believe in it down to my core, where I'm like, this, I found where I need to be. I found my calling. I found what I need to do, because it believes in instituting change by instituting, like, essentially a national change, or a national frame of mind, by making the difference in one person's life, and then that creating a ripple effect. And that one person who's had their life changed now goes out and changes the life of one other person that they know, and then that effect goes into the other person that they know, and so on and so forth, to the point where essentially you're changing communities. And when you're changing those communities, then you're changing life in general. And I believe in that. Like, I believe in trying to make people's lives better, which is why I do this, because essentially I feel like if we aren't trying to help each other out, and if we aren't trying to do what we can to bring each other up and to make life better for everyone, then what's the point? Because essentially, like, if we're all living for ourselves and we're all doing our own thing, which, some people see as the American way, and that's fine. But if we're all doing that, then there's no community, there's no connection, there's no anything. And I think, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that the research shows that the most meaningful thing for humans in general is connection with other human beings. So, if we're not trying to make that happen, then what are we doing? And again, that's not going to apply to everybody, but that's the thing that I believe in hardcore. So because of that, and because I know myself, and because I know that I'm an emotionally invested person, if I bring my work home with me, I am messing with the energy or the feng shui or whatever you want to call it. I'm setting up for some bad juju at home. And I did that when I was a student, because again, I felt like I kind of had to, because I was applying the things that I'm learning at work. I'm taking these case examples that I'm working with, and I'm saying, okay, well, what do I need to analyze here? How can I apply that to what I'm learning specifically at school? So on and so forth. When I became a full-time professional, and when I was working in my field, or when I started working in my field, I knew that if I continued to do that, I would be an emotional wreck, because the intensity of the things that I bring home is much too high for what I would be able to handle on a daily basis. And then it would turn into what Bailey was describing earlier, which is me coming home yelling at people, or becoming emotionally raw or upset for a reason, or by nobody else's fault. by it being purely on me because I'm not realizing I need to set some boundaries here. I need to separate from all of this emotional rawness and be able to move on from it and separate. So because I recognized that and because I knew that about myself, I was able to set things in place where I decided, okay, my commute is going to be my escape. And then I get into the thing that I was talking about earlier, which was, okay, I need to either listen. At first, it was music. That was the only thing where I was like, okay, this helps me escape because I'm a big music person. I love music, and I mean, I think I go on a whole rant about that in the episode of how I cope. Um, but essentially, I go in, that is my thing. But now I found that learning is something else that I really enjoy, and not necessarily in the sense of like sitting in the classroom learning because I do enjoy that, but it's not the same. I enjoy learning by hearing other people's perspectives, and I enjoy learning by listening to podcasts and doing those kinds of things, and so that's become a little bit more my jam. So because I know that about myself, I can say, okay, this is going to be my release. This is going to be the thing that I use to create that separation between me and work. Because if I don't, I turn into an emotional wreck, and I don't want that to happen. So, point being, the big picture. So that's my specific examples and things that work for me. Um, Big picture, I think the thing that makes the difference for everybody is one, know yourself, because if you know what you care about and you know your limits and your boundaries, that's when you can create these effective strategies or these effective things that you can put in place to make life easier for you. So if you know yourself and you know that you don't really care too much about your family relationships, then family doesn't necessarily have to be a factor when you're making these choices or decisions. So if your family's upset about, oh, well, you're not spending enough time with me while you're in school, I don't care. Like, if family's not important to you, then that's not a factor in your decisions. Um, or if you thrive off of constantly doing some form of work related project, then bringing work home for you makes sense. It's something that's like, okay, well, why wouldn't I do that? Because doing this gives me purpose, and doing this gives me the drive that I need to continue to succeed. So if that works for you, kudos. Like, that's awesome. That's just not me, and apparently that's not Bailey either. Even though I'm sure you love your current job, you're also at the point where you're like, okay, well, as much as I enjoy this, I also need some time off and I need some time to separate, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Like, it's
exactly.
gotten to the point where like my job, I get to work with some of like the rarest, coolest cars in the world, and I feel like I don't even get to enjoy them anymore, or like even the car shows, like something I love to
Yeah,
go to and want to do all the time. When I go to car shows, it's just work, 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 and it's like I didn't even get to enjoy that or sit back and just talk to some of the people and get to like
yeah,
hear stories of their builds on their cars and stuff. And so
yeah.
that's why I've kind of backed off and like the main events, I'll do the car show tracker stuff, but like the small ones, I'm just like, you know what? I'm not even going to talk about car show tracker. I'm just going to go enjoy myself, bring my car, and just talk to people and have a good time. And
Absolutely.
that's how I've had to break it down because I tell you, it's bad when your passion and the thing you love gets old. That's when you
Yeah,
know it's like time to, okay, we need to find some kind of separation and happy middle for this.
yeah. Well, and you were one of the very few that were fortunate enough and lucky enough to be able to take your passion and turn it into a job. Much like myself, like I liked helping my friends. And I continue to like. I like helping my friends. I like talking people through their problems. I like doing that stuff. That's something that gives me meaning and something that gives me value. But I also like being able to turn it off at the end of the day. And I like being able to help people in different ways, which again is why I do this podcast. Like, I like the fact that I get good feedback about this, and I like the fact that people seem to get something out of this. I mean, that's why Bailey's on here. Like, he talks about, look, I get something out of your podcast. Like, that's why I listen to it. That's why I support it. And so, because of that, I continue to do this because I know it reaches people. So, I think if you can find that passion, and you just so happen to turn it into a career, then like Bailey said, it's about setting limits with that too, because if you turn that into your career, then that means that you've got to find something different. You got to find some other form of release. And so Bailey's done that by saying, okay, well, this portion of my passion is going to be for fun. And then this other part of my passion is going to be what drives my motivation to do business.
Yep.
So I think that makes 100% perfect sense, man. Like, I know streamers that talk about that kind of stuff too, but go ahead. What were you going to say?
Uh, I was basically going the same route with the streamer stuff, but like car related. Just like
Yeah.
when I worked at the grocery store, it was the weekends or the day I got off and there was a car show. You went to that and you enjoyed it, and you're like, this is my downtime. I get to be around people I love and stuff. And then like I was just saying earlier, like now when I go to a car show, it's like, hey man, tell me about Car Show Tracker, blah blah blah. And like, don't get me wrong, I love that. It's like, holy crap, you know my business. And people want to know that, but there's also sometimes when you're just like, you want to know about someone's car, you want to know their lifestyle,
Yeah.
or you just want to sit back and drink a beer or something while you watch all the cars roll in. And
Absolutely. You don't want to be the hype man.
sometimes there's always the guys that are like throwing their business out there and do this, do that, and then sometimes the business dies because you're not you're taking your business and what you love, but you're killing it and slowly smothering it, if that makes any sense.
Well, I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but I mean, it sounds like what you're talking about is again something that Gary Vee talks about, which is killing your passion because you're turning it into something that it's not anymore, and you're morphing it, and so
Yeah,
then
exactly.
it turns from your hobby or your passion into this other thing that no longer resembles the original.
Yeah. It would be, I guess, like you could say, like, if someone walked up to you and was like, Funny, you have to do these podcasts. You have to stream on these days.
Yeah,
No ifs, ands, or buts about it kind of deal. It's
yeah,
like, okay, I was doing this because I enjoyed it and wanted to do it, but now I'm being forced to do it. Now I don't want to do it type deal.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. I Yes, yes. Um,
Yep.
Well, and so actually that translates perfectly into another point that I felt like was really important to make with this. So with this specifically, I think one thing to keep in mind is perspective. So with that, I think one thing to keep in mind with this is being very cautious about how you view things and how you think about things, because so an example, so I work with a guy who plays football, and he was talking about how his coach had put him at a position he didn't like, and it's complete opposite of what he does well and is known to do well, and has moved him into something completely like. So he went from being very good defensively as a linebacker, for those of you that know American football. So he went from a linebacker to being put on an offensive lineman. So he went from a job in football that requires completely different skill sets and completely different frame of mind to something that he, first of all, doesn't enjoy, and second of all, that he doesn't know how to do at all. So when I was talking with him about it, I was like, well, so you're talking about how you're kind of like the new guy on the team, and you've got all these things going on, and you've got all these feelings about being the new guy on the team, and then on top of that, your coach is telling you that you are most valuable to the team at this position. So that says to me that you have some skill set that coach deems valuable because sorry. So your coach finds something valuable about having you at that position, whatever it may be. So if that's okay, well, he's got plenty of people that are proficient at that defensive position, but you've got offensive now, or whatever the case may be. You can make something out of this if you want to. For example, you can take your knowledge of that position that you're playing now and use it should you ever transition back to the opposite, the thing that you typically do well in defense. You can take the knowledge that you get from playing on the other side of the ball and use that to your advantage to make you an even better defensive player. Or you can take the skills that you get from working on your footwork as an offensive lineman and working on your hand skills and fighting off defenders to then turn that into your advantage when you become a defensive player and you're trying to get through those offensive linemen. You know the little tips and tricks that they're going to teach each other. You know that you're going to see plays develop from that side of the ball, so you'll know their blind spots, you'll know their weak points. You'll know all of those things. And you can see this as an opportunity to develop those skills and really dive into it and get an idea, even though it's not going to be the most encouraging thing, and it's not going to be the most thought-provoking thing for you, you can still use this to your advantage. And you can say, okay, well, I'm going to get something out of this, whatever it may be, because Coach isn't changing his mind. He's not going to budge on this. He's not moving on it. He's made that clear to you. So make the best out of the situation. Show your dedication to the team. Show that you're a team player. Show that you're able to adapt to whatever's going on. And then who knows, you may end up becoming a breakout offensive lineman and get paid the big money because that's what they're worth. There's some of the most important positions on the field. So, ultimately, yes, you can get upset about the fact that you're not playing the position you want to play and that you've been good at, or you can decide to take advantage of the fact that you're getting playing time as a new guy, and on top of that, coach is putting his faith in you as in one of the most important positions on the field, and you get a chance to play at a higher level than you normally would, and you get a chance to develop those skills that will make you better at the position you want to play later. Or you can just decide to be upset about it and say, I'm going to quit the team and do whatever you want. Like, those are your choices. So, ultimately, same kind of thing with this, where, okay, yes, maybe, your passion has turned into something you don't want it to be, but you can use this as an opportunity to turn it into something that you do want it to be. So you could turn it into an opportunity for networking, so that if you want to, and I'm just using this randomly for an example for you, Bailey. I know you've already thought about all this. But like, for Bailey's example, if he wanted to, he could turn this into an opportunity to say, okay, well, I'm not going to look to stay in the car game long term. I want to turn that into more of a hobby again, but I am going to develop these relationships, and now I'm going to get established in the car realm, so that when I do go to these events, I'll be able to enjoy myself and maybe be a consultant for car-related events. Or I can turn into, a professional business manager or an event manager, or, whatever. The possibilities are endless, because you can view that as skill development, or you can really take advantage of that and change your mindset or your frame of mind or whatever. Bailey has those opportunities in his current position, and if he's thoughtful about that and he takes advantage of that, then it turns into a positive situation for him, and it turns into an advantageous situation for him, because he has opportunities through that he wouldn't normally have. So, it's point being, it's all about that frame of mind, and it's all about how you approach things, because your mindset and how you decide to view things changes everything. I'm not saying that okay, well, you're in a completely crap situation and there's nothing good you can find out of it, but if you just think it's going to be better, it's going to be better. No, you've got you've got to put in the work, and you've still got to take the steps, and you've still got to do things, But if you're intentional about what steps you're going to take, and if you're cautious about it and you plan things out, you can turn it into an advantage. It's just about how you go about doing it. You're not going to be able to just fabricate rainbows and butterflies out of nowhere, but you can make things happen if you want them to happen. If you don't want them to happen and you just want to be miserable and just put your head down, put in your 80 hours, call it a day, you can do that. That's a choice. Or you can decide to make something out of it and find value in and find that diamond in the rough. Ultimately that's up to you. So anyway, that's my second tangent for the day.
It was good. It was good.
I
Very
appreciate
solid
that.
stuff in there.
But I think that's the kind of things that I have to remind myself on a daily basis. So, am I getting paid what I want to get paid? No, absolutely not. Like, of course, I want to get paid more. I want to be able to have, and not because I'm money hungry, but just because I want a comfortable life for myself and my family. Like, I don't want to have to worry about bills. I want to be able to afford some luxuries. I want to be able to afford these things. But ultimately, am I going to let that get in the way of my current happiness at work? No. I'm going to take advantage of what's offered to me, which is experience. So I've got the opportunity to do some things at my current job that I would never get to do at another place. And I may never get the opportunity to do it again. So I'm taking advantage of that. And I'm deciding, you know what? Maybe I'm not happy about X, Y, and Z, but I am happy about A through D. So I'm going to focus on that and I'm going to do what I can to take advantage of that instead. So does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
I
So
completely agree. I mean, like with my job, I'm not happy with, like you said, Y and Z, but I'm happy through A through the rest of the letters. So you
exactly.
have to pick and choose. You can't. It's never going to be perfect.
Exactly. Well, and that's yeah. So that's another thing to consider with this work-life balance is because you're never even if you make the job yourself, you will never find a perfect job. There is no such thing because
No.
you may find a job that you really enjoy and that the costs of that job are worth it to you, but there's never going to be, and especially if you add any other human beings into the equation. Any other human being means that there is not going to be something perfect about your job. It's impossible. Um, but you can either focus on the flaws of that or you can figure out a way to take advantage of the benefits. And if the benefits outweigh those disadvantages, that's where it may not be perfect, but it's as close to perfect as it can get.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, the perfect job is working on an island by yourself with monkeys and eating Lucky Charms every day. In my opinion, that's.
Yeah, exactly. But even then, you gotta worry about health benefits, man. It's like, okay, well, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe I get
yeah, that's true.
to
Those marshmallows aren't good for you. That's,
see. So again, no such thing as perfect.
I agree with you.
um, yeah, sorry, it's I get started on these things. I'm very passionate. These are things that I think about all day, so I'm very passionate about this stuff. And again, if I can tell you these things and just a little bit of it sink in, then I'm good because maybe that'll plant the seed that changes your entire perspective on things, and you're able to get the good stuff out of it.
Oh, right there with you.
Right, 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 right. So sorry, I was typing in chat real quick. Um, so I feel like we could really honestly turn work-life balance into an entire episode, and
Yeah, me too. I was really
and
thinking
actually,
that. I was reading our text just a second ago, and I'm like, we don't even need the other three topics right now.
well, and actually, I'll probably just make this an episode by itself,
Yep,
because we've talked for about an hour on this one. Um,
yep.
but I think it's something that a lot of people overlook, and it's something that a lot of people let sneak up on them, I guess, and then they're like stuck in the, well, I don't know why I'm unhappy thing. It's like, well,
Well,
have you
I
have you
also
looked at
I agree
this?
right there with you, but I think you don't really know how to deal with it until it hits you.
Right, absolutely. Well, that's yeah. So I can sit here and talk about how, oh yeah, well, I found my life balance by doing this and this. Really, I didn't realize it until I had somebody to check it with me and to say, um, sorry, I just had something pop up in chat. Um, but it took me having some time where I was a little miserable or a lot miserable, depending on the situation. Like I had those times where I was miserable, and it took me realizing that to to find what was my balance and to find, okay, well, this isn't working for me, but this is. So yeah, I make it sound easy, and I make it sound like, oh yeah, well that's the moment I realized like this is my life work balance. But
I
it
was
wasn't
sitting on
that
my
clear
rocking
cut.
chair eating my yogurt and it
Right.
just hit me.
I was sitting on my island with the marshmallows and the monkeys, and then all of a sudden, outside sources to say, hey, like, you really need to look at this. Um, and it takes, and the other piece to it is it takes constant conversations with those people now. Because if I don't continue to have
All
that
right, back again.
dialogue, I lose sight of it. What's up?
Sorry, I lost you for like 5 seconds. Like said,
Oh,
I
you're
got
good, man.
kicked from the party and threw me right back in. My bad.
That's bizarre. Um, but yeah, so it took me having those conversations and continuing to have those conversations with people to make that happen. And I think something really, really important to remember with all of this is that this isn't just like oh, okay, well, I made my adjustments, I'm done now. Like, this is a constant process. And if you don't check in with yourself, then you run the risk of becoming complacent, and you run the risk of yourself in a bad spot again because you're not continuously checking in on those things and saying whether or not they're working. Because there are times where I got really comfortable and I got really like, oh yeah, I've got a handle on this. This is no problem at all. Like work life balance, who cares about that? I'm great. And
And then it smacks you.
yeah, and then lo and behold, there I am sitting there wondering why I'm so upset all the time, or why I'm so tired all the time, or why I'm so this all the time. It's like, oh, yeah, look at that. While I may have made some changes, all of a sudden, I find myself completely miserable again. What's going on with this? Why am I so depressed? Oh, well, maybe it's because I'm not shutting off. Maybe it's about this now. So, yeah, again, I told you today was going to be a tangent day. I'm sorry, baby.
Yep, that's all right. No worries.
So,
Oh,
yeah, so I know we kind of hammered work-life balance a lot longer than I meant to, um, but I'm happy with
that's
it too.
okay. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a definitely topic that everyone goes through that has a job at least.
Absolutely. Well, and the beautiful thing about this is it doesn't just like I say work-life balance because that's the nice little punchy uh, the punchy tagline for like oh yeah, work life balance, that flows nicely, let's use that. Like um it doesn't have to be work, it can be anything. So it can be
Yep.
content creation, it can be your passion, it can be your hobby, it can be anything that's time consuming, or anything that you're throwing yourself into. Like balance, for me, balance is a factor in my life right now, because if I don't find that balance, I get really irritated really quickly, and
Yeah.
and I'm not very happy until I find that balance again. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but if I'm making steps and I'm making a plan and I'm trying to put that balance in, good. Yeah, exactly. It's not just a job. It could be anything. It could be creating something. It could be a relationship. It could be, I don't know, walking your dog, like whatever it is that you decide is out of balance in your life. If you if you go through some sort of process like this, I promise you it will make a difference. Um, and that's the Aren't You Funny Drew official stamp.
There you go. That's right.
Booyah. So, do you feel like there's another topic that we should cover that would be valuable?
Um,
And
Hold
are
on, let
you
me go
up
to
for
our
another
text real
one?
quick. Oh yeah, I still got another 30, 40 minutes in me.
Hey,
I try never to let you down.
you never let me down, my man.
Uh,
You are a
I
boss.
try, I try.
I always enjoy our conversations.
Um, I think the strategies thing would work in this one. I think the whole education and medication stuff wouldn't work well in this stream. I think that could be a whole nother thing on its own.
Absolutely.
But I definitely think the strategies could fit into this.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to review the text. So I apologize.
Oh no, you're fine. I had to too, and I sent it.
Oh, okay. So cognitive strategies. So like staying away from negative people, negative events. Oh yeah. Okay. So one. Okay. So
Did I
do you
give the
want to?
right like description for that? Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's okay. I didn't know how to put it. I was trying to. I'm not good with big words, so I had to dumb it down for myself, I guess.
No, you're good. Cognitive strategies are basically like mind exercises.
Got you. I thought so. Like, I was thinking about it, and like that's what I was going over. I was like, I need to send a big word to this to make Drew feel like I'm serious.
Well, mission accomplished. I was like, oh
Yep,
wow,
there we go.
he's using my language.
That's right.
All right. So do you want to start, or do you want me to?
No, I'll go. I'll go. I'm sorry. Uh,
No, you're good.
so uh, with like bleeding out of the life events and the life balance with work and stuff, going into this whole strategies thing, a lot of people let themselves get down because they stare at the negatives. Maybe even at work, they just see all the negative going on, like Betsy Sue isn't having a good day, or well, something along those lines. They go into work and they're like, "Oh God, I hate this place,"
Hmm.
and that can definitely tear you apart.
Yeah.
Um, like I know if I went into work every day going, "Oh, I hate this place. It's dreary," blah blah blah, I would never get anything done, and it would be horrible. And I'm
Absolutely.
not saying you don't have those days. Everyone in their right mind has those days. I'm sure you've went into work and going, "Can I just drive my car right through this place?"
Yeah. Well, not that, but like, do I really have to go in today? Like, maybe I can just spend some
Yeah.
time with the
Can I
squish.
just go back and yeah, can
Yeah.
I just go back to my pillow?
Yeah, exactly. Uh, I hear my
But
bed calling me.
yeah, exactly. But definitely stuff like that and like watching the news, like I mean, you go into like celebrities that have died this week in golly, there's what, four of them that passed away this week. There's
Yeah,
a
it's crazy.
crazy. It just like everyone and just small stuff like that is it clicks in your head and it throws you off balance. And let's see, what else was I going to want to talk about? The whole thing of like watching the news or like negative stuff that's going on. If you feel yourself getting into that kind of situation and you're what would be the right word for that? Like thriving for bad news, thriving for
Yeah,
stuff
I
that
guess you're
makes you
just kind of like
sad.
seeking that attention, getting the thrill off of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's definitely a rough place to be because I know that how that goes is I've had a whole week where I'm just like everything sucks. I suck. Everyone else sucks. Humans suck. The world sucks. Blah blah blah.
Absolutely.
It's like I can even get in some of the cool cars that I drive. I'm like, wow, this thing sucks. It's lame.
Yeah.
But and that's saying something. There's people out there in this world that would murder me for that.
Oh, absolutely.
uh,
Guaranteed.
Yeah, but anyways, like I think the best thing to handle that is like call up a friend, go get lunch with them, or go out for a walk your dog, like you were saying, just something to get your mind off of something. Go out on, well, not everyone lives where I live and can walk 10 minutes to a beach, but go stand out on a beach or stand out by a lake or even on your back porch and just breathe and let
Absolutely.
let the little things kick in. Because I'm telling you, like if you let everything just sucker punch you right in the mouth and all the negatives life is going to suck.
Absolutely. Yeah. So is it okay if I
That's
jump in real quick?
yeah, yeah, of course. I was done.
Perfect. Ah, yes. Okay. So yeah, two things. Two big things with that, and there are things that you said, but I want to put specific language to them just because that's the language that
Yeah,
I use all
of
the time.
course.
So so two things. One of which is just being present in the moment, because I think a lot of the time it's easy to get caught up in, oh, okay, well, this is what's going to happen, or this is just getting caught up in all of these worries that are outside of your control, or that you can't do anything about right now, or whatever, and then missing the fresh air on your face, or missing the beauty in your backyard, or missing the beauty in the relationships that you have, or whatever. It's easy. Oh, it's so easy to get caught up in all of that other stuff and to miss living in the moment. And then, by the time you realize that you've missed it, the moment has passed and you're on to something else. And life is life, that moment and that opportunity has passed you by. So then you're stuck in, and then that can turn into an ugly whirlpool of, oh well, I missed that, I'm missing other things too, and now I've missed the opportunity to miss that, and now I'm going to mourn missing that, and it turns into this just ugly freaking cycle, and it's not fun. But taking a moment instead to just live in the moment, and really evaluate your life and evaluate the good things in your life really helps, because that's something where then you have a greater appreciation for what's going on with you, whether that's opportunities, even if it's things that aren't going great. Like it's still an appreciation for, I'm alive. I have these opportunities in front of me. I have these skills that other people don't have. I have this perspective. I've lived through these things or whatever. And I don't want this to turn into like a, oh, just think positive and everything's going to be better. Like, that's,
Yeah,
I don't want it to turn into one of those kinds of things. But if you can really stop and appreciate what you have, then it doesn't turn into, oh, well, I'm just going to put on my rose colored glasses today. It's, no, this is something that's legit. This is something that's going on with me right now that I can prove that other people can also see, and something that I can't deny. Because a lot of the times we want to deny those things, and a lot of the times we want to say, "Oh well, that's not really that big a deal," or "It's not really this," or "It's not really that," or "Oh well, it's not really me, it's not really whatever." And that's all bull, man. That's all complete bull, because it is your life. You have earned that. You've earned the right to brag on yourself. You've earned the right to say, "Yes, I have made it through this." There's nothing wrong. There's a huge difference between being an arrogant ass and having confidence and accepting the fact that you're good at something, or the fact that you've made it through something challenging. Like there's a huge difference between those things. And I think a lot of people just think, oh well, if I brag on myself, or if I feel good about myself, or if I feel prideful about this or whatever, that I'm just being an arrogant douche. And that's not the case. Like nothing could be further from the truth, because giving credit where it's due is one of the things that I think that a lot of people miss. And when you miss that, and you're constantly stuck, and again, there's nothing wrong with challenging yourself, but if you get stuck on that kind of stuff and you don't give yourself the opportunity to say, hey, I did something good here, then you're constantly in a set of, oh, okay, well, this isn't good enough, now I need to go do this, and this isn't good enough, now I need to go do this. And it's like, man, that's just miserable. And I've been there. I've done that. Like I am my own worst critic, and I think most people are. But I'm especially hard on myself, and I've had to kind of recognize that and say, okay, well, maybe I deserve some credit for this, or maybe I did do this, or maybe I did do that. And sometimes it's things that we can't realize ourselves, but that's where our support people come into play, and they help us realize that. When they help us realize that, that's not an opportunity for you to say, "Oh yeah, no, that's whatever. It's not a big deal." If they're bringing something to your attention, there's nothing wrong with celebrating it in that moment because you don't get that opportunity every day. So take advantage of it while you can because it doesn't last. That's for sure. Because that again, there's that living in the moment. That moment will be gone, and your opportunity to relish in the fact that you did something will be gone because then it'll move on to, well, I need to do this now. So yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so second point with that is something called a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I'm sure people have heard those words. I'm not sure if you all have heard them thrown together or not. But self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I go in like Miss Susie or whatever her name was, I can't remember the name you used. If I go in every day like Susie May and I decide that work is going to be miserable today and that today's going to suck and X, Y, and Z, then it's going to happen. Because then you're going to find one of the things that we do as people is is we don't actively seek out evidence against what we think or know, unless we're consciously doing it. So that's when things turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I think that I'm going to have a sucky podcast, the likelihood of me having a sucky podcast is higher. Not only because of, things that I'm doing knowingly, but things that I'm doing unknowingly or subconsciously. So I'll, instead of waiting to hear what Vapor's going to say, I may instead go on a 6-hour long tangent and be a horrible host. So then I turn into a crappy podcast host because I didn't listen or because I missed my opportunity because I knew that this was going to be a crap podcast. So then instead of me challenging that and doing what I can to make it a good podcast, I'm going to say, oh, well, that was just meant to be because it was going to be a crappy podcast today anyway. So whatever. And so that's why I push so much for people to really pay attention to their thoughts and their feelings, because a lot of the times those things can feed into each other. And again, we're not looking for things that go against what we think is going to happen. We're not actively looking for, oh, well, the sky's blue today, and I know it's going to be blue when it could really be green. And you're like, well, that's just an off shade of blue. That's just whatever. We'll find. I'm serious. It's something silly, but like, we will do things like that all the time because we don't want things to be outside of what we think they're going to be, because that's uncomfortable. And it's not something that we actively seek out. It's just not. Our brains aren't programmed that way. So then instead we'll find all of the things that we do or that we have to support the theory that we have going on. And again, sometimes we'll make, and it could be a little thing like, okay, well, and I think this is something, I could be wrong, and please forgive me if I'm wrong on this, everybody, but I think that Tim Ferriss did something about this with weight loss. So about changing your mind and about changing the way that you think about things. So if you think about, okay, well, I need to eat healthier. So if you have that in the back of your mind, if you usually eat 3 cookies in one sitting, and you think, I'm going to be healthier, I'm going to eat healthier, these things, and you eat a cookie, you find that you actually stop after 2 cookies instead of 3. So then you're already doing things to make yourself a healthier person because you have that in the back of your mind and you realize, okay, I'm going to make a choice that supports what I'm doing. And I'm going to make a choice that supports me being a healthier person because that's what I'm trying to do. And so then that eventually turns and kind of snowballs into this effect of, okay, well, now that I've done that, I'm going to continue to make these good decisions because I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I think it was Tim Ferriss that had that in one of his books, but I could be wrong about that. But regardless, that's, that same concept applies to everything. So if you go in and you say, okay, I'm going to have a horrible day at work, guess what? You're going to have things happen that support that. And it's not going to be every day. And there will be fluke days where you think that and it doesn't happen. But most of the time, if you go in knowing that, X, Y, and Z is going to happen, the likelihood that it's going to happen, whether it's outside of your control or not, is much higher. So it could be that, again, you make some small choice that wouldn't have normally made that happen on a regular day, now happens. So is that making sense?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Cool. So those are the main things that came to mind when you were talking about that, Bailey. Sorry. So I was like,
Yeah.
we need to talk about this.
Oh yeah, for sure. So anything
So-
else you want to add? I'm in the keep going mood if you are.
Absolutely. So I think I can't remember if I talked about this or not. I think that I did. But for the sake of this topic and this purpose and possibly repeating myself, another kind of like brain hack or another thing that you want to keep in mind. And again, I know that this is probably going to be information overload for some people, so I apologize in advance. Like, please, by all means, feel free to listen to this podcast a couple different days or a couple different times when you're at different points in your life or whatever. Like, please feel free to revisit this one because I know it's going to be a huge amount of information, and I apologize. That's me. That's something that I do. But once I get on a roll about something, I'm like, yes, I need to get this information out there. So
The
again,
train has left the station.
Exactly. So if you get 10% of the information today, cool. Like, come back to this in a couple days and look at it again and see if you can get 10% more.
Yep.
So another little brain hack or another little exercise or thing to keep in mind with these cognitive diversion tactics, if you will. So, and I think the best example that I can think of with this, I think it was in, it might be in Inception, and I could be wrong about that. So again, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this. But I think Inception is the one that had this in it. So, essentially, it's again being aware of your thoughts and being aware of what's going on in your mind. So, if I'm sitting here talking to you about pink elephants, and I'm talking to you about their awesome pink trunks and their pink ears and how they just light up the room with all of their pinkness, and then I tell you to stop thinking about pink elephants, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about
Pink
the pink elephants. Right. Because actively not thinking about something is still thinking about it. And I don't want to get into like too much philosophy or anything like that, but like essentially,
That's 3 more episodes we can do.
oh my gosh, yes. So actively not thinking about something is still thinking about it. You're just thinking about not thinking about it. So again, that turns into a whole like tongue twister and a huge just brain melt that I'm not trying to get into today. But in essence, what you're doing is drawing more attention to the thing that you're trying to get rid of. So, if I'm talking to you about pink elephants and their pink trunks and their pink awesomeness, and then I start talking to you about blue tigers instead, and then I talk to you about their blue stripes and their blue awesomeness, and just the fact that they even have a different growl because they're blue, and then I tell you to stop thinking about pink elephants, it's a lot more likely that you're going to think about those blue tigers instead because that's different. It's something that gives your mind something else to focus on. And what makes that even more powerful is if you do that for something that's meaningful to you. So something that works for me that I've kind of talked about before is I like to laugh. I like to laugh a lot. I love laughing. I like making other people laugh. I'm all about it. So something that works for me is when I'm having a particularly tough moment or I'm having a particularly tough time. If I think about something that makes me laugh and I'm in the mood for it, it completely changes things for me. So if I think about something stupid that somebody said to me, or if I think about like a scene out of an Ace Ventura movie because those crack me up and they still crack me up, or if I think about some stupid thing that I'm gonna do or that happened recently, or something that relates specifically to that situation that I was just in, or whatever, then all of a sudden I find that I'm not focused on whatever it was that's messing with me. And then not only that, not only do I distract myself from that and give myself something else more meaningful to consider, but then I give myself the opportunity to go back and revisit that thing that was bugging me, which I think is something that a lot of people don't do. And you see this specifically with things like drugs, or it could even be something like video games or books or movies or whatever. Is they'll take their escape and then they never really address the thing that was bugging them. So then it keeps coming back and they're like, well, it won't go away. Like, this isn't working. Well, it's not working because you're not addressing what's going on. Instead, you're just taking an escape from it and then you're putting it in the back shelf. And when the time comes around for something like that, or even something not related that stresses you out, then all of a sudden you find that you're doubly stressed. And it's like, well, why is this bothering me so much? It wasn't like this before. Well, it's because you shelved it away. And then you're wondering why it's not going away. Well, because you never took care of it.
And it'll only get worse when you keep trying to apply
Right.
Band-Aids to it.
Oh my goodness, yes. And then that Band-Aid's going to get ripped off at one point, and you're going to blow up and end up needing surgery because it got infected while it was sitting there or whatever, you know.
Yep.
So, point being, with all of that, to put a nice, neat little bow on it, if you will. So, if you have something that's going on that's bugging you, then you have the opportunity to get away from it, and the most effective way that I've found to get away from it is to think about something that is meaningful to you, or something that does, give you value in some form or fashion. And it doesn't have to be something funny. That's just what works for me. It could be something that you've learned about recently, something that has to do with the topic that's bothering you, or whatever the case may be. You can do those things, but the important thing is that it doesn't just sit there, because if you do that, then it's not going to go anywhere, and like we were just talking about, it's just going to fester, and then that's not getting you anywhere. That's actually making things worse.
Yep, exactly.
So,
Letting it sit there and boil is always the worst thing.
and it doesn't, it can be something where if you're like, you know what, I'm not mentally in a place where I can come back to this right now. That's cool. Like, again, self-awareness is everything. You need to know what works for you, and you need to know your limits. You need to know your body. You need to know your mind. You need to know all these things. So I'm not saying, oh, well, Drew said that I need to go back and address this today. No, not the case. If that's not what works for you, don't do that. But I just know for me, if I let things sit and I let things fester and I continue to let them fester and I continue to let them fester and I continue to put them off and I continue to put them off, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And it's not even worth it for me. If I take care of it, and I take care of it at least as much as I can. So again, I'm not going to completely resolve it maybe, or, whatever. I'll take it as close to humanly complete as possible in that moment and just grit my teeth and do it. Because if I don't do it, it's just going to bother me later. That's going to get in my way of quality of life. And I'm just not about all that. Like, I'm not about stress. I'm a pretty chill dude. I've developed more stress as I've gotten older. But I'm really not about that life. Like, the more relaxation and satisfaction I can get, the better. But if something comes up that's really bothering me, I need to honor that, and I need to give that the time that it needs because it's there for a reason.
Exactly.
And then once I do that, then I can say, okay, well, now I can let this go. And then it doesn't just sit there and fester, it's dealt with. So when I say dealing with it, that's what I mean is giving it its time, problem solving what you need to problem solve, and then letting it go and moving on. And if you can't let it go and move on, then that means that there's still something else you need to do about it. Whatever, whatever that is, I don't know. You're the only one that will know that. Um, but no, again, know thyself, know what you need to do, know your body, know all of those things. But if you look for those signs, that's the difference maker. So
Mm-hmm.
there you have it. That's Drew Funny's words of wisdom for the day. Peace out. I'm done. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's it. Drop the mic.
Mic drop. I'm out. But no. So those are those are some mental exercises, if you will, or some things that may or may not work for you. Part of the reason that I throw so many out there at once is because I don't want to just leave everybody hanging with like, oh well, here's the one thing that's going to work for you, and then it doesn't work, and you're like, oh man, screw this, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave people hanging, so I want to give plenty. Right. This podcast sucks. I'm never listening again. Well, sorry.
Port.
Right. Yeah. So I wanted to throw plenty of options out there so people kind of have some things in mind that they can think about or do. And then, hopefully you find something or some variation of those that works for you. That's my hope.
Yep. Me too.
So, two
I think we
topics
did
in
pretty
one
good.
night. We're kind of killing it right now.
Looks Dream team.
we could push for more if you want to. I don't know how dicey we're feeling, but again, I think we could end up turning this into like a 6 episode day.
Yeah, I definitely think we could do a part 2 next Tuesday.
Exactly. Well, I mean, this is already.
If you
part
run out of
2 for
ideas.
sure.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So yeah. Exactly.
Because the other topics I brought up, we can definitely do whenever you want to bring me back. I know.
Yeah.
I know you don't like to ask me to come back a lot because I got it.
Oh please, yeah. That's why I've asked you to be in 3 episodes so far already out of the 9 that I have. Yeah, this Bailey guy, I just never want to have him back again. I mean, I talked about having you. You're basically an unofficial co-host at this point. Like,
well, whenever you have an emergency, you need a podcast. Don't you just say Bailey, take over? Boom.
Exactly. Booyah. And like Bailey, I'm taking the week off. You got this one.
I got it. I'll suck it up in PUBG and do a podcast.
Absolutely. Well, see, and the beautiful thing about your setup is you don't even need to play a game. Like, you can just do straight podcast. I can't do that yet.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All this fanciness that I never use.
Right. Hey, I mean, you got the opportunity. So, if you want to use it, that'd be the time to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, exactly. So, on I guess on our ending note then, Chad, is there anything that you all feel like we need to discuss? I'll give you all a few minutes before we wrap up today's episode. So again, per the usual, Mr. Bailey, you're probably tired of doing it at this point, but I'm gonna tell you to shout your stuff out.
My name is Bailey, also known as Vapor. You can find me on all social media at blauder or b_lauder on Twitter. You're more than welcome to follow me and message me for any advice you ever need. I'm here for anyone, anything. So that's about it for that. And Funny, again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to do this, and I love being able to talk to all of y'all, and hopefully this helps someone.
Absolutely. The other piece, let's help Bailey get his business off the ground a little bit. I know that he's got some things that are under construction, but in like a couple weeks, go to carshowtracker.com and just at least give him some site visits so that we can get some traction for that thing, because daggone it, he deserves it. So let's make it happen.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Exactly. carshowtracker.com. So that's what you need. That's the next marketing tool right there. You need a catchy song. Boom. Let's make it happen.
That's right. I know. We'll make a rap song for
it. Yeah, rap it. Absolutely. Get some
I'll
big
fly
name
out
rapper
to you and
on
we'll
there.
do like a Thug Nasty video.
Oh my gosh. I would be the worst rapper known to man. Absolutely, hands down. that everybody would leave. Actually, you know what? That would probably work because I would be so bad that it would go viral, and then you would still get Car Show Tracker visits because it was that bad. It'd be like, oh my gosh, there's the dude with the bad rap again. Like,
Yep.
that's the way it would happen.
I mean, that's how the rap business works. You suck at it and you say the same sentence over and over and you become a millionaire.
I mean, for some people that has worked. I'm not gonna act like that's the entire rap business because I have way too much respect for them.
Yeah.
But there are some rappers that have definitely made it off of not much more than that. That's for sure. Um, so for my stuff, if you would like to find me in some form or fashion on some social media, feel free to hit me up. I try to make myself as available as possible. You can find me at Aren't You Funny? So that's ARENTUFUNNY. That's on Twitter. If you want to find me on Twitch, it's also twitch.tv/Aren't You Funny. The episodes are broadcast live typically every week. Some weeks I take off and decide to do something different. I may end up doing that next week. We'll see what happens. But typically every Tuesday, I try and broadcast this live and then put out the previous week's episode edited on Anchor and Stitcher and iTunes and Pocket Casts. So those are all the places that it gets distributed currently. So feel free to hit up any and all of those. Rate, subscribe, write, review, whatever you want to do. If you want to send me an awesome or horrible email about the podcast and give me any feedback, then please feel free to do so at aren'tyoufunnytv@gmail.com.
Ooh, I can send horrible feedback. Let me pull up my Gmail.
Absolutely. Go for it, man. Pob's already sent me some horrible feedback. So you can
that's
feel
just
free to
because
do so as well.
his was probably like, "Sorry, I didn't want to talk on your podcast. Don't ask me again."
No, his subject line was Bootylicious69 because that's what we had talked about as the person that would be emailing me. And then he said, hey, you should talk about that thing that you forgot and stuff and things. And that was literally like the text in the email. So, if you want to send me emails like that, feel free to do so. Totally up to you all. I make myself available for that very reason. And I'll hang it up on the wall. My first email for the podcast. But yeah, if you want to email me, what's that?
We got to set a goal for next year where I fly out and we do a podcast face to face in person in a room with cameras on us.
Yes, that will happen. Oh, yes, please. Okay,
got it.
Goal set. That is happening. That is now in stone. It's been aired on the internet, today. Therefore it is real.
Boom. Got it. Yep.
So if you want to find me on Instagram, it's Aren't You Funny TV on Instagram as well. Facebook, I actually have a fan page available now, so that's Aren't You Funny. If you just go on Facebook and search Aren't You Funny, that you will find me there. I think that's pretty much all of them. I think that's all the socials. Covered Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch. Yes, I think that's all the ones I have. I don't have Snapchat. I'm not fancy enough for all that.
Oh, we know.
I know.
Waiting for Funny to get a Snapchat for 2 years now.
And you'll probably be waiting a little bit longer. That's just not.
That's okay.
I've never been drawn to it, man.
The day I fly out and we do a podcast in person, you have to download Snapchat. Deal made over the internet.
That's a fair trade. That's a fair trade.
Okay, fine.
All right. But yeah, so I think that'll do it for us because I'm not seeing anything where it's like, oh yeah, you should have talked about that. We probably gave you all way too much information, and again, I apologize for that. But I just,
no, we don't.
I felt like it was valuable, so I'm just gonna roll with it.
Sure. This is our podcast.
So, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. Thank you all so much for listening, sharing on your social media, subscribing, favoriting. Leaving comments, all of that good stuff. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope that this podcast brought you at least a little bit of peace of mind. Peace out, everybody.
Gang, gang.